Hello, and welcome back to a very exciting episode of Schmoozing with Arby. This is season 2 we're talking here. We've gone into a new topic. We've actually established a topic for once. We are in season 2, learning UK jewelry. I think that's all the future, the past, the present, everything involving UK jewelry. So joining us here today for these wonderful episodes, this episode specifically, is the Sugarmans. So we have over here to our right or left, depending which way we're looking, we've got JoJo Sugarman. JoJo actually went to yeshiva with me, been through COVID together, been through a lot, you know? And on his right or left, depending on which way we're looking, is Marc Sugarman, who is going to tell us a little bit about some of the projects that we have in store here in the UK. You want to tell us a little bit about Brighton, because for our American listeners, we've got English listeners as well, but for our American listeners, I assume they've heard of Brighton Beach in New York. Is that correct?
Yeah. Brooklyn Beach. Yeah.
In Brooklyn Beach, yeah. So tell them.
Actually, south. I don't know where. It's somewhere.
We can't put you on the spot like this.
There's a lot of Russian people go play chess there. That's all I know about Brighton Beach.
That's what you really need to know.
Little Odessa, I think.
Okay, it's fair enough. I'm sure for all of the Americans who know exactly what you're talking about, this makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
But yeah, okay. So you want to tell us a little bit about Brighton and what your plans are for Brighton, and also, you know what, while we're at it, how about you explain a little bit about UK jewelry, like the geography of it and all that.
Okay, thank you, and it's great to be on the show. I must say, Malcolm Gladwell and Schmoozing with Evie, the two. I absolutely never miss. So it's great to be here in person.
I'm glad I'm on such high pursuit there.
Exactly. So UK jewelry. I mean, I guess not dissimilar from many Jewish communities globally. In that, there's been a big centralization of communities. So in the UK, it's around London. So if you go back 50, 60 years, and certainly 100 years. The kind of provincial communities were thriving. I mean, places, particularly port towns like Hull, which is on the northeast where the Russians came in, and Brighton back in the sort of 1800s was both Sephardic and Ashkenazi communities flocked to the city, and there were jobs, and it was a port city and so on. What happened in the sort of post 1950s time, when jobs became much more available in London, is there was a centralisation, and you got a hollowing out of provincial communities. And
do you know, by the way, how everyone landed up in all of these provincial communities? Because, I assume people came from Poland, Germany. That was So how did they end up all of there?
Well, Brighton, which is the one we're talking about, is on the coast, so the boats would come in. And I guess that's how they... And Hull, which is what you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, you go back to Cromwell when he opened the country. So Jews were expelled in 1210, I think it was, from
1295.
1295 from the UK. Okay. And then were only allowed back in this sort of...
350 years later.
Yeah, 350 years later, and thanks for that.
This is all very helpful.
I'll tell you how I know. There's a big mural right by where I live, which says we appropriated this land from the Jews, which means stolen.
It's a what's it?
Cemetery.
It's a cemetery.
Jewish cemetery.
Yeah.
They just stole from us. So if
It's
you're a Cohen, you can't come visit me.
Yeah.
Well, the Cohen's just terrible.
Yeah. But Cromwell let the Jews back in, and the first Jews that came over were from Holland. They'd come to escape the Inquisition up to Holland, and it's what the history of European Jewry in particular is movement, just fleeing persecution. And anyway, the more recent history, as I say, is that provincial communities have hollowed out a little bit because younger people, when they've had job opportunities, they've moved up to the centres like London.
Like you.
Yeah, I moved to London.
Because you were originally from Brighton.
Yeah, I grew up in Brighton.
And also your wife is from Hull.
My wife is from Hull.
So we're
cosmopolitan.
As the Americans like to say, we're out of towners.
Yeah, we're out of towners, and we're living proof of this whole problem.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And warm, tend to be warmer if you if you come from the provinces. You're a little less aggressive, but Brighton is a beautiful city. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful cities. It's always kind of mentioned as one of the most attractive places, if not the most attractive place to live in the UK, in all the surveys that are done.
Really?
where they chart happiness. And
So we can call it like you've got family in Florida as well. So we can say it's like the Florida of the UK. Almost.
Exactly.
Florida,
that
but
analogy is perfect.
it's a very young population, Brighton, whereas Florida,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
So
that's a good point.
So let's just establish. So we've got that Brighton's a place now. We've given some geography lessons to them.
Yeah.
Explain the connections. So how exactly did you? What's your role in getting Brighton back on the map for the Jews? Because, like, I assume if we establish that, but that is the plan right now, no?
That absolutely is, and in fact that line that you just used is the line, because the chief rabbi who launched our project, and we'll talk about that project in a second, back in 2017, his quote was, "We want to put Brighton on the Jewish map and the Jewish world on Brighton's map, and Brighton should be a beacon of light to the Jewish
Or
world."
the Goyim.
And so yeah, I mean that's absolutely right, and the kind of view that we took, because what basically happens with these provincial communities is that they lose people, and then they lose income as a result of losing people, and then they get to a stage where, if they were sensible, the Orthodox communities would merge, because they would just basically take financial kind of look at their situation, and they would make a sensible decision.
Because we're used to living in ghettos and like shtetls and all of that stuff. We're used to living together.
We used to live together, and everyone wants to.
It's a community.
They want, but not. They also want to have responsibility for doing something for the community. So the kind of the push to consolidate so that you live within your means is offset by the pull of wanting to stay in control, and it just all these provincial communities should have seen kind of consolidation, and that didn't happen in Brighton, and that caused some financial stresses as well, and what we're trying to do is consolidate assets to create something which has a future.
So how are you going to actually do this practically? Because it sounds all very nice on paper, but I assume it's not an easy job. And
it's not easy. I mean, so the big advantages that Brighton has is it's less than an hour from London, so it's a very easy commute. It's about the most beautiful place in the UK. It's right on the seafront, and our site is 500 yards, so it's like a less than a 5-minute walk to the seafront. So it's really an amazing place to live. So we have all those natural advantages, and Brighton as a city, as Joe was saying, is a young city. It's a vibrant city. The economy is very, very strong. It's one of the strongest economies in the UK. It has creative arts, tourism, it has the kind of professional industries like banking and law as well. So there's a lot to offer young families who want to kind of relocate. The Jewish, what's been lacking in our view, and this is our hypothesis, I guess, is that there's not been enough in the way of Jewish facilities so that people can live an observant life. So, for example, when I was a kid, there were maybe 5 or 6 kosher butchers in the city. Now there's none, and there's nowhere to go, and there's nowhere to buy kosher food other than maybe a little bit from Sainsbury's or Tesco, the supermarkets for the like Publix equivalent. But the kind of stock that they hold of kosher food is very small. So our kind of thesis is that if we create the right facilities, given the backdrop of a beautiful city that's close to London, an easy place to earn a living, it could become a kind of revitalising place for Jewry in the UK.
Do you think it's feasible?
Yeah,
this is by the way, this is the most ambitious, in my view, the most ambitious thing that's been attempted in terms of the scale of the infrastructure. So you can go on to explain. The scale of it, because I don't think that's been put across yet.
Yeah, the financial investment is vast. I mean, it's a huge investment. And do I think it worked? Yes, because I think what's happened, certainly in the post-COVID world, is that distances have become shorter. Zoom and so on have allowed people to work remotely, and there's been generally a shift to people living in more attractive areas. The suburban parts of London, house prices have rocketed, and that's because people are living in places like the Cotswolds and coastal areas like Brighton, because they want a better work-life balance, and they know they can have a bit of everything. They can, there was an interview on one of the radio stations in the UK recently. They were interviewing the CEO of one of the big insurance companies, and they'd just done a lot of research on worker habits. And they said that workers want three things. They want to be able to work from home, so they want a bigger house. They want to be able to work in a co-working space, and they want to be able to get to their place of work fairly easily. Now Brighton offers that, and our site offers that, because we talk about what the facilities are in a second. But it's an easy commute. You live by the coast. You know, it's just a very nice way to live your life. And I think we have a real genuinely good chance. And the reason why it's so important to do this is that we know from research that where there are no Jewish people, anti-Semitic attitudes are at least twice as prevalent as when there are Jewish people.
Why do you think that is?
I think because the devil well, not that that's probably the wrong way to put it, but what you don't know you fear is a better way to put it. What you don't know you fear.
Well, it's true. Like, they going back in history, like the Rhinelands, these guys had no clue. They were doing all the crusades and stuff. They had no clue what a Jew even looked like.
Exactly.
The first time they met the Jews was when they were killing them. So I think it's very fair. Like, we're seen as the big bad because we don't know what they are.
Yeah, and I think there's other risk as well, which is that it's not just the fact that there's greater anti-Semitism in areas without Jews, it's also the fact that if everyone lives in the same area, there are existential risks. You know, God forbid something terrible happened in Golders Green area in northwest London where we are now, then the Jewish population would really struggle. And there have been episodes where there's been
Well, also,
threats.
we don't need to talk about catastrophe, but like, why should the Jews miss out on basically the benefit? What we've learned from the pandemic is that you can have a better quality of life. You can work less. You don't need to be working 5 days a week. Like, the economy is moving in a direction where people are working less. They've got more time to enjoy life, and for a lot of people where they're living in London, it's not that fun. It's
it's a hard
it's a
life.
city.
It's a hard life.
Everyone's kind of upset the whole time. They don't talk about it.
My question is that
No,
also, like, why not somewhere like Bournemouth? Because I mean, like, there was a thriving Jewish community in Bournemouth. I know my family ran the Green Park Hotel there. Like this, it was like a Jewish hotel that everyone, like, all in the 19 whatever it was. Like, hopefully we're doing an episode of that as well. But that was where the big thriving community was. But they end up moving on. But why specifically do you want Brighton? Just because you have that personal connection? Or?
No, I think there's two big differences between Bournemouth and Brighton in that regard. One is that if you look at the census data, Bournemouth is an old community, Jewish and non-Jewish. It's a retirement.
It's a retirement home, yeah.
There's not a lot to Bournemouth. I mean, let's be honest with you.
They're bringing Bournemouth
University.
University.
No, it's a beautiful place. It's beautiful, but it's not like a vibrant city. Brighton is an incredibly vibrant city. It's cosmopolitan. It's like known as Little London. It's a fabulous place to live if you're a young person. You've got, there's clubs, there's bars, there's restaurants, there's unbelievable coffee shops. There's the Lanes, which is this kind of antique area. It's like very bohemian. So there's just a ton to offer, as well as the natural landscape. You have the seafront, and then you have the Downs, which are this huge kind of countryside. So I think that's the biggest difference. And the other big difference is the connection to London, because London is very, London's amazing. It's just culturally there's so much to do. And in the Brighton to London train journey is 50 minutes, 50 minutes, less than an hour. It's like being in a suburb of London and taking a tube. It's just so easy. So I think for that reason, it's Brighton and Bournemouth are wholly different.
Interesting. Well, I mean,
but Bournemouth would also have been good. Like Bournemouth, but there aren't many cities that are like Brighton and Bournemouth. That's the point. Like it couldn't have been in. There weren't too many cities that would be even like in a comparison with Brighton.
My question to you though also is, we've seen that these Jewish communities have thrived in all of these places, but they've also died in all of these places. So what's stopping this going in very nice 20-year run, and then people just continue moving back? Like, they have their stunt and they move back.
Yeah, nobody can predict. I mean, people can't predict tomorrow lunchtime, let alone 20 years. I mean, who knows? Maybe London as a centre becomes less of a centre. What's clear is that to have a Jewish life, you need some critical mass and you need some facilities, and we're trying to put those in place so that there's a chance. I mean, whether it's successful or not, long term, I don't know, but I do think that it's a mistake for all of our eggs to be in one basket as a community. We do need to think about having more presence across the UK.
Also, I would add, it's not true that the hypothesis that all these communities die. There are some communities like Manchester, for example, that have grown into big communities. But I think also another key point is that it could be potentially something that grows, because we've seen communities outside of the mainstream, like outside of Golders Green and Hendon, like Boreham Wood, Edgware, start thriving because house prices in the traditional Jewish areas are too high. And so Brighton could just be seen as like one of those satellite places, just in the same way as Boreham Wood and Edgware would have been in the past.
Yeah, I think the other thing is there's always change in life. I mean, there was, as I said, you go back 60 odd years and Jewish life was more in provinces. Everyone moved to London. Possibly then they said, well, maybe it won't last, maybe we'll go back to the provinces. And what seems to be happening now in the economy is that there is this sort of levelling up agenda, which means that the provincial communities in the UK, A, will have better transportation infrastructure networks, and B, there's more of a push for more jobs there. And also with Brexit, I think there's a change. So I think there's a genuinely good chance that some of these provincial communities can really work. And I think Brighton has way more to offer than most.
So speaking of having stuff to offer, what do you have to offer people who want to come to the community? Because it's hard. They're going to have to move job realistically. But there's a possibility they have to move job, moving house. Are houses prices more expensive there, cheaper? Well,
This is $1 million question, absolutely. I mean, the focus has to be for us to try and attract young couples. And the reason for that is that if we can build enough demand cohort of young kids, nursery and so on, then in time we can think about a school, which then in time will create a virtuous circle. So that's our focus. So the question is, how can we make it financially attractive, to your point, to have young couples feel like they could live there. And I think that the thing is, when you're starting off in life, you're going to pick somewhere that's pretty new to you as a couple anyway. I mean, so I guess if you're growing up in London, it's not quite the same. But from the provincial communities, there's definitely a possibility they'll think about, well, we're not going to probably stay in Edinburgh or wherever it might be. Where might we move to? And maybe Brighton's an alternative to London. I think there'll be some people in London who will think, we can't afford a house here, we could move to Brighton, and so on. So in terms of the sort of financial side of it, we think there's kind of two key things. The first is jobs. We need to be able to help people to get jobs in the city, and we've got a co-working set up on our site so that people can actually work out of the site. But more than that, we're working with a charity called Work Avenue, which is a London-based Jewish charity, which has a co-working site themselves. And what they do, which is really clever, is they have a group of 10 professionals who give advice to people to get into the workplace and to launch small, medium-sized enterprises. And they also work very closely with all the local businesses. So when there are job opportunities that come up, they help people get those jobs. So that's really good. And we have a lot of contacts in the city as well with law firms and so on, where we can try and place people and try and at least get them introduced for potentially for training contracts.
We're getting some people jobs. We're going
to get jobs. So jobs we think is very important, and is
that's incredible, because that's a big stress for a lot of, like, anyone, especially like if you're newlywed or something.
Oh yeah.
Got to provide. So having that already as a setup, like, it's not given for sure for every single thing, but you do your best. That's like a part you're building community.
We want to open doors, and ultimately people have got to prove their worth and get the jobs themselves, but we can help them with interview skills and just basic skills to help them enhance their CVs.
Can I ask as well, like, you're saying who's we? Like, I just want to know also a bit about, like, if we can go into this, who's financing this, like, because there is a lot going into it. So
yes.
Are we able to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just say one other thing in response to the last question, which is important as well, which is that the site is where the synagogue is the Orthodox shul. So the charity behind the Orthodox shul is also keen to subsidise young couples that come to the city. And it makes sense because their articles are such that their mission is Jewish continuity and to grow their membership base. So they're going to subsidise rental costs to keep them at a fairly reasonable level, and also all the facilities on site, which we'll talk about in due course, those get subsidised too. So the financial offer for a young couple, if they can get a job, which we're going to help them with, then their cost of living will be quite low compared to, say, London and other parts of the UK, and their quality of living will be very, very high. To live 500 yards from the beach in a beautiful city in an amazing new facility and a vibrant one at that. So the offer we think is really, really compelling.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So let's go back on the question of
who are the we. The we is a philanthropic foundation, basically, and the foundation's goals include Jewish continuity and promoting Brighton as a city, because 2 of the trustees come from Brighton. So that foundation is funding the construction costs which fall to the synagogue, and then there's a development company as well. So it's a partnership, and it's a real effort to sort of invest properly in the community assets, which are ultimately going to be the key thing to drive continuity and vibrancy.
Because I think it's very important that you're actually, like, firstly, incredible that just as I assume it was very close to them selling, that you guys got involved. So it's like really, it's incredible, because it would have been, had you guys not got involved, I assume, end of the community like that. So
I think so. I mean, I have a strong view that it would have been, because I just feel that site is the site where you can, it's big enough that we can, and we'll talk about what's going to be in a second, but you can put a lot of key assets which can create the critical mass that we talked about before.
So you were going to say what we have to offer there. What exactly is the site going to be? Where, like, explain the community in your view, how you want it to look like, or what's your plan?
Okay, so
start with the site. What facilities?
We mentioned Brighton before, right? So most Jewish people now live in this neighbouring kind of suburb called Hove, which is beautiful. It's the nicest place, certainly along the south coast, possibly in the whole of the UK. It's really lovely, so we wanted to create this sort of consolidation of facilities on this site, this acre squared site, and we decided first. But we had a lot of big decisions to make along the way. First decision was, okay, we're going to excavate. So we've gone into the basement to make the site as big as possible. So in the basement, we're building a mikveh, because again, we want a sort of the lowest common denominator to be that anyone who's pretty observant can come and spend.
And very observant.
And very observant, yeah, could spend the weekend here. That's the lowest common denominator. So
and live there.
Kashrut.
You're saying lowest right now.
Yeah. Kashrut and
highest.
Don't let the man speak.
Kashrut and religious facilities are very important and a necessity to fulfill that goal of making sure anybody, religious people for sure, could come and live here. Because ultimately, if you don't have the roots of a strong Orthodox community, the community won't last.
So I was going to say, because we may have touched on this one of the times we recorded this, but there may have been a couple of times. But how, like, things such as a butcher, for example, they've got it costs a lot to have a butcher there and get all the produce. And let's say you have 10 to 20 families, like, it's not such an, like, there's no real, like, demand for it, like, enough to make enough.
There's about 3,000 Jewish people in the city, in the area.
Okay.
So it's more than 10 to 20 families, but we want to supplement and grow that number. Living on site, you're right. I mean, just to sort of rewind on what's on site. So there's 45 units of accommodation. 10 of those are townhouses or mews houses, which are big. They're like 2,000 square feet, 5 bedroom, 4 bathroom, and it's quite unusual to have a house of that size with a nice garden, a nice terrace, and a shared garden at the front. It's really beautiful, and 2 underground car park spaces. So it's really high end living. 500 yards from the beach. It's really, you don't get that in many places. So we have 10 of those, and then we have 35 apartment units, the bulk of which are 2 bed, 2 bath. And the idea behind that is that for young couples, or young couples maybe with 1 child, that's absolutely perfect. So that as I said, that sort of drove what the target is. And the idea is that some of those units get sold as enabling facility, because obviously building this whole thing is very expensive, and we need to recoup some of the money. But most of them will get rented out, because we're recognizing that for people to move to, and this is the kind of genesis of your question before, people moving city, that's a big undertaking. So we don't want them to commit to having to buy a property at the same time. So they can move city and see if it's good for them, and if they like Brighton, then there's a path to ownership. We're making, I won't go into too many details, but we're making it easier for people to buy property, as well as supporting them on the rental costs, which I mentioned before. The synagogue's going to support them on the rental costs. We also have a route that they could, if they can't afford to buy say 100% of a property, they can maybe buy 50% and step up over time. So we're trying to be innovative in helping people. So residential is one thing, and then food is another big thing. We don't have, there's no kosher butchers in the city. There's no ability to eat out and keep kosher in the city.
London itself is just starting to build its restaurant district. It's like we're just at a point now that people are saying, okay, they've got serious stuff, so it's going to be quite hard to move people over again.
Well, we're going to have a wonderful Fleischig kosher cafe and kosher restaurant. We also got a really nice shop so people can keep kosher at home very easily, and we have a kosher bakery, all on this one site, and a milky cafe as well. So there's a ton of basically food is going to be easy and
good. And very good.
Excellent quality. So it will be excellent quality. We have the head chef of one of the leading kosher restaurants in London, has decided to move with his family to the site. He's Baltashuva, and he sees this as his calling. So he's got 2 young kids and his wife, and they're going to live on site, and he's going to run the whole thing for us. He was trained by Gordon Ramsay.
Really?
He's very high level.
He's good.
He's great. I mean, the food is.
He knows how to make an idiot sandwich there.
He can make a burger.
And he likes criticism as well. Like
he's a magnetic character.
Yeah. Like sometimes you go to a restaurant and like they've had a bad dish for like 10 years, but
Are we really going into this?
I'm just saying, like clearly you've never listened to the person that said like that's not a good dish. But this guy's different.
So you're supporting him and his family, like.
Well, he's going to get paid. I mean, he gets paid a wage.
Yeah.
And he's also he's incentivized, and if he does well, he'll do very well. And
so how many people are working under you then at that point, as in working within this site?
That's a great question. I mean, basically, we've got, so we have, let me talk about the facilities that that'll help
we get a little
people understand. So you have the residential, you have the food side of it, you got the religious side, the shul and the mikveh, and then you have the sort of cultural education. So we have a nursery. We also, there's a school next door, and we built 2 classrooms for them. This is a nice deal. They get to use the classrooms during the day, and then in the evenings, weekends, and school holidays, they come back to the community. Mm-hmm. So there's an income stream and also facilities. So that's nice.
Do you have like a hall, like involved, so like people can? Was that what you're saying? Like the nursery is that hall?
No. We also have 2 community rooms, which is like a mini JW3, and the community rooms are really the pivot.
JW3 for Americans. No one going to know what the JW3 is. It's a huge centre that we have in London, where you have all sorts of talks, different clubs. You have yoga there, for example.
Cinematic evenings.
It holds thousands of people.
The Jewish Film Centre, goes
very tons of stuff.
Yeah, I mean every day there's maybe 20 lessons and clubs. And
right.
Stuff.
So we got two of those kind of rooms where we can host that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then actually, it's worth saying this because the pivot of the site is those 2 rooms, because you basically, the shul is right in the middle, then you have the 2 rooms adjacent to the shul. So the shul can feel kind of intimate with 100 people in it, but you can take the back wall away and it has capacity for 270 people.
Wow.
So we can host a wedding and we can host a big Conedre gathering there, it's easy. And similarly, those 2 community rooms are adjacent on the other side to the cafe restaurant seating area. So again, we can sit 200 people plus for dinner dance. So we've designed it in that way to give, like if you have a wedding, with a band so we've designed it that way to make it as flexible as possible.
Wow.
And then the final thing we have is a co-working space that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So it's really, as I said, the goal was how do we attract young people?
And the gym. You got a gym.
We have
the most important thing.
Yeah, so the question we asked ourselves was what facility do we need for young couples, and this was the sort of answer that we came up with.
It really does. It seems like it's encompassing everything. So should we go back to the question of like how many people is like not employed but like I guess are working under you guys?
Yeah, so we reckon we'll have around 8 to 10 people, probably more like 10 if I'm honest. Running the whole thing. So that basically means you've got to have a site manager, you need a CEO type figure, you need a CFO, finance person, you need someone to run the co-working space and the gym, you need marketing people, events people, and so on. And then all of those people do not include the restaurant, because obviously you've got all the casual labour for the restaurant. And our hope is that the Jewish students who work in the university will be casual labour in the restaurant as well, and also casual labour in terms of teaching, because the other thing is the nursery, and the nursery will employ teacher staff and so on. And one of the big focuses, excuse me, for the site is we want after school every day for all the kids, irrespective of which school they go to come to the site, have a bite to eat, and then have a couple of hours of programming. We do that Monday through to Thursday, which would be Kodesh and Israeli history and Ivrit, as well as philosophy and whatever else it might be, which nothing to do with Judaism necessarily, but that's the plan.
So it really does feel like it's all encompassing. I want to just touch on the point you just said about the university students. Do they factor into your plans at all, building them maybe? I don't know, can you tell me a little bit about what university life is for them there? Do they have...
Say a little bit about this.
I get...
Yeah, I could say something about the university life just because...
Oh, we want to... So we'll touch on the...
No, not this.
Okay, fine. So we'll go back to that point in a second that you wanted to. Yeah. But I'm saying, no, continue with your...
Wait, what was
with the point that you were going to say.
Sorry, I'm bad at this.
Yeah, terrible.
So it's pretty random where Jews go to university. Like, for example, we've got the biggest Jewish university is Birmingham, and there's no real reason why they're all there. They're just there because other Jews are there. Which makes sense, but there's no proper infrastructure, so it can be a little random. But there are a fair amount of Jews in Sussex University and in Brighton University, and it would make sense if it became more popular on account of the infrastructure that they've now got available. But there are already a good amount that would be able to benefit from the site, and it would just be nice.
So this is what I was going to ask. Do you have any infrastructure in mind to help these students? Because at the end of the day, those could be potential people who would end up moving to the community if they...
Yeah, I mean, so one thing we know is that people who've come to work and study at the university often will stay in the city, more so in Sussex than most any other city, because it's a lovely city.
Sussex is the region in which Brighton is located.
Yeah, so there's actually two universities: University of Sussex and Brighton University. So yeah, it's a good point. In terms of the geographic location of our site to the university is too far to live, and whilst there may be some people who would say, you know what, I don't need to live on campus, I'd rather live in a kosher site and so on. I don't, our sense is not many. I think most of the students who come, they want to live a student life, they want to be on campus. So what we know from our focus groups with the students is that they want the casual labour. That's what they really value, and they'll come across and they'll have dinners when we provide things. So we can certainly create some infrastructure.
Do you think that is a target for you guys, that you want to involve them as much as you can, or for now you're focused on bringing other people in?
Well, I think there's different levels of priority.
It's a long time.
I think for sure day one we'll do things for the students. It's important, if we can make their lives better and more observant Jewishly, and just to give them their ability to maintain their identity as Jews, then that's a fantastic thing. So we will definitely do that. Our priority for sure is young couples who are a little bit older, but the students we definitely want to help as well.
Oh, okay.
One of the other goals I should have said earlier for the project is to encourage visiting communities to come and stay in Brighton, because Brighton is a tourist venue. There's no question.
So we're going to have like a hotel kind of thing, or?
Well, we're not going to have a hotel, but there is a hotel with less than a 5-minute walk from where the site is, and it's a nice hotel. And the idea is, and we're talking in talks with them at the moment, is that any visiting community could take a clutch of rooms in the hotel and just have a Shabbaton away, which is always brilliant. I mean, we do that all the time from our community Kesher in London, and we know from our discussions with Jewish organisations. So PJ Library is an organisation which some of the American listeners may be familiar with. They provide books and so on to young kids, and they want to have an offsite with us. And Moshe House, another American charity, they want to have an offsite with us for their Moshe House people. So there's...
Cool. And what about like Chabad and Hillel and these kind of places? Are they...
They're separate. There's a Chabad. There's two Chabads actually in the city. There's the Chabad for students, and then there's Chabad, which is a Chabad house. But the rabbis, who I'm very close to, they will for sure be involved and help us. And in fact, one of the rabbi's wives will help run the nursery. So there's definitely an involvement there. But this point I'm making is that one of the things we've been surprised by is, as we've spoken to communities throughout the UK and organisations, almost without exception, they're saying they would love to have a Shabbaton in Brighton. And our sense is also that there's opportunities when we look at Europe and in Israel and beyond, and in America, that people may want to come and stay in Brighton, use it as a base and enjoy what the city has to offer. And the interesting thing also, I mean, Joe was talking about the history before 350 years absence, and now we've been back in the UK for 250 years, so it's more than 250 years, but Brighton has had Jewish population for 250 years, and there's a very rich history of Brighton Jewry.
Like constantly or?
Continuously.
Yeah.
Just like in Israel, the Jews, continuous.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Native.
So we're indigenous.
We've got the native Brightons.
We are. But this is important. So some of the most well-known sites in Brighton were as a result of Jewish people. So I will only give one example because people in the States won't necessarily know what we're talking about. But there's something called the Palace Pier. Palace Pier is very famous in the UK. It's like a fun destination, amusement, arcades and candy floss, all that sort of, like Coney Beach or Brighton Beach.
Coney Island.
Coney Island or Brighton Beach. And the pier was basically going bust in 1901. They were building it and they just didn't have the funds to finish. And a Jewish guy called John Howard, he A, invested, and B, is an engineer by profession, and he made the pier happen. And as a result of that, there's many the hospital, there's a couple of wards named for him. So that's one example. There's many other examples like that. The Jewish contribution to the city is huge, and where this really kind of comes alive in terms of people visiting is that there's also one of the most beautiful shuls in the UK, situated in Brighton. It's probably
This is the shul that you're trying to.
No. This is 2 miles away. It's a grade 2 star listed. It's a very high, very important building. It's called Middle Street Synagogue. It was donated or funded by the Sassoon family in the late 1800s, and it's magnificent. It's probably maybe second to Bevis Marks only in the whole of the UK. It's outstanding. So
will you have any connection with that shul? Are you able to?
So the charity which owns the shul on our site also owns that shul. Wow. So we have a strong connection. And the idea
will you work together with them, or do they? I would say, is there a them right now?
There's no congregation. It's a building.
It's just a building that's being put to dust right now.
Building, exactly, for the last 18 years has just been sitting there, and it's in a badish condition, not disastrous, but badish. And there's been the odd wedding there during that time, but no regular services because the population moved away from that part of the town. However, that site is right next to the pier and the lanes. It's the tourist area of Brighton. So what we think will happen is when people come visit for the weekend, maybe on the Sunday, or maybe they'll walk even on the Saturday, but certainly on the Sunday, they'll go, particularly if they've got kids, they'll have an educational discussion and learn a lot about the history of Brighton Jewry, and maybe learn a little bit about Jewish culture if you know, and the history of the city. And then they can go to the pier with their kids. So it's just in the perfect spot. So it makes the whole Shabbaton experience far richer. So it could be really nice.
So that's the plan. What do you want to use the purpose of the Shabbaton? Like, what is the purpose of it? Just more to involve other communities, or as like a selling point almost?
Well, there's no real place. If I'm a shul in London, I want to do a Shabbaton. There's nowhere to go really other than another shul in London.
Yeah.
Or unless you want to go like France or something.
Yeah.
So it's a nice summary kind of thing.
Do you actually have accommodation though for, let's say they come with like 50 families or something? I don't know how many families will come, but like let's say even 20 families, you have some accommodation?
We have some on site. We're holding back some units, but the
bulk
of it's going to be that hotel I mentioned. The hotel, which has actually got a relationship with the Jewish community. They used to go kosher for Pesach, and so that hotel we're in talks with, and the idea is that with pre-booking they'll leave some rooms aside for us, and that room has about 60. So that hotel has about 60 rooms, so it can accommodate most visiting communities. And it's not the only hotel in the vicinity. There's probably 5 or 6 hotels which are of different levels of quality within about say a 10-minute walk of the site.
So yeah, they'd sleep in the hotel and they just come
Come.
on the site, eat meals, chill out.
Yeah. So all the food, all of them can be done on site. Although we may also provide food to the hotel, so like in a package or whatever, so that people, residents can be comfortable and eat in the hotel as well.
Yeah.
But the vast bulk, the way we're seeing it is that we think people will sleep and then come to our site, and whether it's Friday night meal, Friday night service, Shabbat morning service. And we're open for Shabbos, by the way. We're staying like some of the Israeli hotels, so we want to be open and as a service to the community. So people prepay, they can have a Shabbos meal and so on. So all those things.
So how do you also see it growing over the next few months and years? Do you have like some sort of plan, some trajectory of what's going to go?
Yeah, so I think the first.
And also, to jump in firstly, how many families do you currently have? And like rabbi situation, I'm just going to lead this.
Okay. So as I said, these are estimates, but we think there's around 3,000 Jewish people in the area. How many families that is, I don't know. How do we see?
Is that involving university students?
No, ignoring university. Long-term residents.
What's the kind of demographics of those 3,000?
Well, the shul membership skews very old. I think the general populace, there'll be a range, big range, because there's for sure young families in the area because it's a hip place to live, but equally it's a retirement population to a degree because it's by the coast, and so I think it's a big mixture.
There's a ton of Israelis for some reason.
There's a big Israeli population. There's almost 200 Israelis in the city as well.
Really?
Yeah, which is surprising. But, so in terms of how we see it, the kind of 23 or so units which are 2-bed, 2-bath, we would love the bulk of those to be young couples. We feel if we can achieve that, then we have a good chance of filling up the nursery, which then means a school is not an impossible dream. And so that's the sort of plan. What we're discovering as we kind of carry on this journey is that there's a great number of London Jewish people who have got holiday homes in Brighton. We're discovering more and more of these all the time. And so the site itself will also lend itself to being a fabulous facility for people who live in the vicinity, who live nearby the centre. And so our hope is that more and more people will take a decision to have holiday homes, and that other people will decide, we don't have to live on site because there's only 45 units, but we can live nearby and then we can make use of the site. So do
you think the site will grow though over time, or?
No, we won't be able to increase the number of units. We wouldn't get planning consent for that.
People buy houses nearby.
Yeah, people. If a large number of those units on site end up with these young families, then we made a great start. That's for sure. And then as I say, the surrounding area, there's a lot of residential property. We would hope that people will come and live nearby.
So we were going back onto right now. How many families do you think you have, and what's the trajectory?
Well, in terms of interest in the site.
Yeah.
So we've been gradually building up.
So I'm just gonna.
Is that an issue?
That was you.
Yeah. Try not to maybe put your foot back down.
So where do we start from?
We'll start from the question again. So, how many families do you think will go from that?
I've got my feet down.
Yeah. It's I know it's a slight issue because we have the table so close to you guys, but okay.
Yeah, so the
wait 1 second. Let's just.
Yes, so we've been building the database over time, and we've driven the database through events. So we have events, we then sign people up and so on. That's been good, and then we've had surveys and asked for people to register interest in the housing. We have about 150 registrations of interest. Now, how many of those materialise is always difficult to know, and we're only really now just starting to market quite aggressively, for want of a better phrase, to the national Jewish community. And as we continue
and
that
it's
process.
International, by the way. Yeah.
And international, we would love to have some Americans and some Israelis and some
Canadians.
Not too many Americans.
Not too many. and
that was a joke. We would love.
We would love. I mean, we would love to transport 30 families from New York right into Brighton, they'll be perfect. Because that's the other thing, actually, is it's a bit like a kibbutz, but we do want pioneers. We want people to come and have a real big part of growing this. It's not like being a non-entity in a massive community. You have a chance to really shape this community, which I think is quite an attractive selling point.
So I want to ask, like, let's say for example we do get 10 families or 15 families, like Bezrat Hashem, from America or whatever. What can we offer them in coming into Brighton? Like, for example, most of them I assume will have some sort of established job, or maybe they're younger couples where they have, if it is going to be a smaller environment, it's going to be a smaller amount of people there. A lot of jobs require a vast amount of people. So how do we deal with those issues?
Well, for sure there are jobs, as I mentioned, on site, and our ideal scenario is that I mentioned there's tennis jobs plus the catering and the education jobs. If we had 12, 15 jobs, put them all together of quite a senior nature, and we could fill 15 people in 15 of our apartment units, that would be amazing. That would be a dream, because then you've got people actually living on site, working on site, and that creates so much vibrancy.
Brighton's also like a one of the biggest job markets in the UK, and the UK job market's really good at the moment. It's no jobs.
Can I ask, compared to, when we do 3 different places, compared to London, okay, help me out with 2 other places that aren't as exorbitant prices as London. But I'm saying
prices.
I'll give you a sense of square foot price per square foot.
Sure.
So price per square foot in Brighton is about £650. In northwest London, you take Golders Green. Golders Green is probably £800 a square foot, and then if you look at areas like Hampstead, you can double that. So Brighton is not cheap, but it's not as expensive as many parts of London. It's equivalent to, say, Mill Hill East or Bournemouth, which are more for the American audience, in the sort of suburbs of London. But in my mind, in my eyes, it's way more beautiful. So you end up with a new build with amazing facilities, 500 yards from the beach, instead of being in a suburb of London, which, with the best will in the world, is not particularly attractive. What the suburb of London has, which we don't have, is a vast Jewish infrastructure. So you sort of, and again, it's a different sort of lifestyle, I guess. You can be basically a non-entity in a massive community, or you can be a kind of a very important driver of change in a Brighton.
Is your project, is it going to be offering to help out with the payments and stuff? What's your...
Yeah, I mean, so there's subsidies from the shore for residential costs, and the facilities, the use of the facilities also can be subsidised. So, again, this is where we have a bit of sort of alignment, which is that our target is young couples with potentially nursery-age kids in the future. Nursery can be a huge cost in the UK. It can be like £5,000, £6,000 per child per year, which you got to double that in terms of what you need to earn in order to pay that post-tax. And we're basically saying we'll absorb most of that cost. So that's a massive subsidy, and
that's a huge...
It's huge. So you get the residential subsidy.
Just for that, I think that you're getting all the young couples coming. Like,
I know
how much it is here. Like, it's ridiculous. You're paying per hour what, like a normal wage per kid.
Yeah. It's exactly. I mean, you're basically, a lot of women almost...
They think it's not worthwhile to work because
exactly.
You're just losing that out. You might as well sort out your kids yourself. And, yeah.
So this is the idea. If you have a young couple and they say, okay, we both want to work. Maybe one of us wants to work in the co-working space. We want to have the kids at the nursery the whole day. Just life becomes very easy.
Was it one thing I want to touch on? And Joe can probably also help out with this one. Is for the more religious community that you want to grow. What, other than the shul, are you going to have any different like programs going on? Is there anything that you want to grow in that sector as well? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to have a little team of programming events people, and some of them will be, educators as well, community educators, and they'll be absolutely focused on young couples. It's going to be. I mean, I can see that sort of community education role being focused on at least 2 things. One is the young couples who want to learn and want to almost on a daily basis have something, some thought-provoking share or just a learning together, whatever it might be. And then also that young community educated couple will have to spend a lot of time with the younger kids for that after school activity, which is kind of in place of the fact, because we don't have a school day one, creating that Jewish identity and the social opportunities for the kids to be together. That's really important. So that education couple, which is the way we're seeing it as part of the programming team, is really, really important.
I'm in Oxford, which is a provincial community in the UK with a very small Jewish community. I'm actually lucky in comparison to other provincial communities that there's been a huge amount of infrastructure put in, giving us kosher meals in the evenings for the religious students, and we just about have a minion in the morning. But it's not perfect. For example, living in Brighton would be infinitely better than the sort of situation I have at university, which is like, for example, there's no centralization, which is what Brighton offers, which I think you need in a provincial community. I'm spending half my time at Chabad and half my time at this shul, which is like a non-denominational shul, which is really accommodating to orthodoxy. It's not a orthodox shul, and so I can't spend all my time there. So it's a little complex. And there's not constantly food. I can't get a meal whenever I want, and I would like it also if there were, there's a few religious guys with me, but I feel like if there would have been more and a bigger sort of base, it would have been a lot more of a fun Jewish experience. I would have felt like I'm growing a lot more.
So do you think Brighton can offer that for? I say because realistically these things will take time to grow.
Yeah.
And like people often won't have patience for that.
Yeah, listen. I mean, we have to have faith in Hashem.
Yeah.
I mean,
from day one, Brighton beats what I have at Oxford, just because of it's a much bigger Jewish community already. You've got people already signed on that are more than what I have, and what I have is manageable, and it's quite nice actually to be outside London. And this will instantly be better.
I would love to take. I went up to visit him in university this week, and I would love to take his minion, the 10 of them, bring them down, parachute them in, and they could stay there. It'd be perfect. And you can join as well, and the guys from Rashid. So it could be. I mean, who knows how these things.
But it's nice also to have a. This is a big deal. I have to travel every day to the minion. I have to cycle. It's like a 10-minute cycle, right? If I was walking, it'd be like half an hour walk. Whereas it's so nice to have a minion on site. You get that in yeshiva in Israel. You have a minion on site.
Yeah.
You have three minyanim a day.
Makes it easier.
Makes it easy to be religious. Because it's like Judaism. You should be struggling to be. You should be sacrificing to be Jewish. But it shouldn't be that the sacrifices are like going to minion. It shouldn't be that those kind of things should be easy.
You need to have staples that
you need to have staples. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sacrifices
be careful when you say like sacrifices. It's not saying
not sacrifices. No, it's like you should be working hard in learning Gemara and understanding the parsha, understanding what's going on.
Yeah. Connect to it.
Connecting to it. Yeah, you should be working hard, but you shouldn't be sacrificing in your life.
It means like the same way you build a relationship anyway.
Oh yeah.
The best way to build a relationship is by putting work into it.
Yeah.
That's what you mean by I think.
Oh yeah, because basically in some of these provincial communities you're putting work in just to get to square one, just to be governing, right? Whereas you want those fundamentals to be easy.
Yeah, we were going to ask the question of why young people especially these days are usually on their mind just thinking Israel.
Yeah. So
what's going to pull them to Brighton? I guess we've established there's a lot of benefits there, but Israel over Brighton or Brighton over I guess it's a hard thing to think. So I guess Joe's had this all prepared already, so we'll give him a chance and then then you can do damage control after.
Yeah. No. I'm lucky. If I say something stupid, you can just cut it. But no,
there's going to be a lot of cuts.
Definitely no Brighton over Israel. That's not true. Like if you can go to Israel and you want to go to Israel, much better you go to Israel. I don't think anyone is going to say like I was going to go to Israel, but I decided to live in Brighton. If you want to go to Israel and it works out, you should go. But I remember my rabbi telling me that it's not always unbelievable for people to go to Israel. Let's say you move to Israel, you don't feel comfortable in the community, you're going to learn less. So it's better you stay in the UK. It's not for everyone. For example, for me, my family's all in the UK. I think it depends on what happens, but there are reasons why it might be difficult for me to move to Israel. And Israel is unbelievably beautiful for Jews to live in. You got learning, you got everything there. But at the end of the day, it's a secular state. We're not in a situation where it's like you must be in Israel. It makes total sense to be in Israel. There are problems with Israel, and there are problems with the UK. But we're in a situation where there are people that are going to live in the UK just like there are people that are going to live in America, and we've got to make it try and make it as nice as possible for them, and give them the best chance of having the best time they can. And I think that's what this sort of community does. We're just trying. We're in Gallus. We're still not fully back. We're just trying to make the best of it that we can.
Yeah, listen, I agree. I think if you could move to Israel, you should go. I mean, I wouldn't say Brighton over Israel any day. I wouldn't, and we're not even protesting to even claiming that that's a possibility. People should be in Israel if they can, but a lot of people, it's not for them. And then the question is, okay, not. If that's not for them, is London really the only opportunity? It shouldn't be the only opportunity.
But now it is. That's what it seems.
Exactly, and Brighton is beautifully. It's a beautiful, beautiful city, both in terms of the natural landscape and the architecture, and the vibrancy that exists in the city. And so we want to create it as a genuinely really attractive option for Jewish life as well as just life. So that's the thinking. But it's not going to compete with Israel, no.
So I've got one final question before we end off, and forgive me if I've missed anything out. Is there anything specifically that?
No, listen. This has been great. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. I'm very much. You honestly, you've got me sold. We're going to sign the contract after we finish this episode.
Yeah, listen. I would love it if we could have like you guys, and you've got careers, you've got college and so on to get through. But at some point in your lives to come down and I could see it being amazing. All of you together and lots more besides. It could be fabulous.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the future of this. But now the question is, in 18 months' time, August 2022. That's correct. That's 18 months time.
8 months. 10 months time.
10 months time.
Yeah, August this year.
22.
And why is it? Okay. Listen, I'm not a maths major.
We're in 21 right now. Yeah. It's like coming to the end of 21.
Before the next Rosh Hashanah.
Before the next Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
Are you going to be living in Brighton when it opens up?
Well, we definitely as a family are going to have 1 year there, for sure. And I'll be down a great deal because of my role in this whole thing. So, yeah, I'll be spending a lot of time in Brighton. Yeah. And that's something I'm really looking forward to. I'm already down there a great deal. I'm probably down there, at least once a week, oftentimes twice a week, and it's great.
Do we want to just throw in Brighton Football Club here for a second?
Oh yeah, okay.
I realised I made sure we stayed away from it for a big part, but I guess for all the football fans out there, for the soccer fans
fans, yes. So I mean, yeah, Brighton is a Premier League club, and EPL, yeah. And it's it's like being an NFL franchise, and it's been the EPL now for 5 years, and we're looking quite good for sixth because we've started the season quite well. I say we because it does feel like a community. I've got a small involvement in the club as well as a non-executive director, and it's a big thing, to have a Premier League club in your city is really big. And it's not just that. We have a great cricket team as well. We have fabulous sports because you've got the sea, and there's all the sort of the boating and the yachting and various other the surfing. So it's really attractive if you play sport. Also cycling and there's a marathon.
I guess there's lots of views to do and like.
Yeah.
I mean, also with the Downs, which are the sort of national parks.
Yeah.
There's a ton of hiking to do, and so it's just a great life. I mean, it's like at San Francisco, perhaps without the weather, but not bad weather. It's the best weather. It's the sunniest part of the UK.
Really?
Brighton, yeah.
Well, just the most south.
It's most
closer to the equator.
We've got some science in this podcast as well. So, are you guys near to the stadiums at all, or?
It's a schlep. I mean, we.
I mean, it's probably good. It's probably a better thing that way because then. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to encourage people to walk, but you can walk. But it's.
You can't.
There's a lot of games.
You can drive.
You can drive for sure.
To the midweek games.
There's a lot of games.
Walk to the games on Shabbos.
There's a lot of games. Exactly. There's a lot of games outside Shabbos because we're Premier League.
Yeah.
That's the things. I would guess that of the 19 home games in the league, probably say 8 or 9 of them will not be on the Shabbos.
Really?
Yeah.
If you're on the site, we'll get you a ticket.
But I'm saying so would you have any connections to be able to like get people involved and get people memberships and stuff? That's something that's
people can join. People
can buy there's no queue. It's not Arsenal.
There is a queue, but equally the queue doesn't last forever, and people can buy season tickets, and people can buy tickets to the old game as well.
So one other point that I just realised, that we didn't touch upon. Let's say you have someone who's a more established family, with kids at the age of like 12 to 16 or something. Is there opportunities for those kids?
Yeah, I mean, there's no school, but there's plenty of opportunities. I mean, there's going to be a Maccabi and a JLGB, and those for American audiences are sort of kind of no. Well, they're charities which focus on sports and just skills. People getting more skills in life and that sort of thing. And they're most of all they're an opportunity for kids to socialize with each other. And so we had those types of things and lots of programming for kids of that age.
Yeah, so there's a fantastically good school right next, like really one of the best schools is right next to the site, and and then you can get really good Jewish education on the side.
I mean, actually, that's a great point because the schools in the city,
they're good.
Leave the Jewish schools to one side, which we don't have yet, but the schools are outstanding. There's a school called Brighton College, which is a secondary school, which was voted the best school of the decade in the whole of the UK. Yeah, it's outstanding. It's really, and there's brilliant feeder schools, primary schools too. So education, and healthcare, all those types of things, and sports and so on. They get a huge tick here for Brighton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My hot take is that no, I'm not gonna say.
No hot take. Okay, fine. All right. Well, I think we've covered the majority of the topics that we want to do. If anyone wants to be in contact with you,
that's a good question. So,
what can they do?
So there are two main websites, and there's a lot of social media too. The name of the charity which is running the whole thing is called BNJC. BNJC. BN stands for Brighton, JC Jewish Community. BNJC.
BNJC.
And then the site is also for the residential offering, because obviously we're trying to sell properties. We've called it Sapphire Hove. Now, what I haven't talked about is some of the design of the whole thing and the Jewish and the Israeli kind of cultural references which dominate throughout. So sapphire, it's the sapphire stone, 10 Commandments, is one of the predominant colours on things. So that's why we've called the whole thing Sapphire Hove. And that's spelled SAPPHIREHOVE. .co.uk, sapphirehove.co.uk.
So let's go through both of those one more time, just everyone remember.
BNJC.co.uk, BN Brighton Jewish Community, BNJC.co.uk, and then sapphirehove.co.uk. And you'll get a lot of information. You can also register interest on either of those two sites. And so just back to the cultural references, which are really important. Sapphire and then turquoise, techelet. And that those kind of colours kind of dominate through the site. And we've also got this glass sculptor. He designed the Museum of Generations next to the Kotel, which is an entirely glass museum. His name is Jeremy Langford. He's world class. He happened to grow up in Brighton, so he has a connection with the city. So he's doing these two kind of installations for us.
He's one of the guys on the board?
No, he's not. He lives in Israel. He lives in a moshav in Israel. But he's doing this work, which is like this beautiful, beautiful glass architecture, and it's a side screen to the main entrance and also to the shul entrance. And within those that glass sculpture is four kind of square rectangular images, which are sort of Old Testament or modern Israeli
Torah.
Torah. So Torah scrolls is one of them, and various others. So it's going to be really. We're very proud of and just being very open that this is a Jewish site and pro-Israeli and all the rest of it. That's very important to us.
It's amazing. Okay, is there anything else we want to advertise at all that we've missed out, or is there any? If people wanted to donate, is there?
There's an opportunity to donate to either of those. To the BNJC website.
Mm-hmm.
Listen,
I believe they're funding the future of the UK jury.
Exactly that. I mean, I think we're starting to now get into the stage where we can market properly. We can approach foundations and other funders, because this is about Jewish continuity, and it's also about breaking down anti-Semitism, all those types of things. There's so many positives in this scheme that we really hope people will support it.
Amazing. All right, Jojo. Well, thank you so much for joining us here. This was This is incredible. I really, really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to my new house. We're obviously free, right?
Oh, obviously for this interview, of course.
Exactly, it gets everyone. This was really interesting. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. And yeah, feel free to check out all the websites. I will leave it all in the links. All the links down below, not all the links. But yeah.
Oh yeah, I need the links. That's good.
Jojo, it's been lovely.
Yeah, it's
Thank
been a
you all.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.